In a world where everyone was forced to leave the comfort of their homes to get drinks, one hero emerged. Its name was Drizly, the #1 app for alcohol delivery. And it allowed everyone to compare prices on the biggest selection of beer, wine, and spirits and get them delivered in under 60 minutes. All they needed to do was download the Drizly app or go to Drizly.com. That's DRIZLY.com to take destiny in their hands. Dun dun dun.
Well, hi, everybody. It's Ed Mann, the executive producer of the Real Brady Bros podcast. This is my favorite job. I've had many jobs, some of which involved selling shoes, being on the radio for a while. All of them were really fun. This is impactful. It's fun. It's exciting. And here's why. These two guys. It's Barry Williams and Christopher Knight. Hi, guys.
We need to talk about your shoe salesman.
Oh, right. It was great.
So you are who they modeled Ed Bundy after?
It was pretty much that guy. I will tell you one funny story. I will tell you Ted Bundy. I will tell you one funny story.
No, not Ted. I'm talking about the Bundy.
Oh, I know, married with children. Yeah, he was a shoe salesman. But there was one story which I'll recount, and I know that the audience is they can't wait to hear this because they all know who I am. There was a woman who walks into the store, and I swore, this falls right into our age group and sort of the 60s, 70s thing. And she walks into the store, and I knew I recognized her. I knew immediately who it was. And I was all of maybe 21 years old, one of my first jobs while I was at UCLA. And so you do have celebrities who wander around in Westwood, and this individual walks in, and she said, "Hi, can I take a look at some of your pumps or what have you?" And I said, "Sure." And I kind of girded myself, and I said, "Correct me if I'm wrong, but are you Peggy Cass from the game shows?" And she said, "No, I'm Shelley Winters, and it's a size 7.
Oh, no.
I confused an Academy Award-winning actress for a game show panelist. Oh, I was mortified. And at that age,
well, you were all of, 22?
21, and I run back to get the shoe, and sure enough, by the time I got back, she was gone.
I had a scene in a movie with her.
With Peggy Cass and Shelley Winters.
Shelley, do you know the movie Wild in the Streets? Christopher Jones, Shelley Winters. It was about everyone over 30 should be dead. And, rock and roll is kind of a real teen type movie. 60s. Okay.
No, I think I've heard of the title,
Wild in the
but I'm
Streets.
not familiar with the movie.
It doesn't come to my mind either. All right. I'll have to look that one up. Oh, by the way, these questions come on our Facebook page, which you have to visit because we always share stuff that we find, some stuff from shows of the era, stuff about the guys, and it's always a lot of fun. It's at Real Brady Bros, and we invite you to ask questions whenever you like. And here's one now. Look what just popped in. Shelley, not Winters, asks emotionally. This is for Barry. The Voice of Christmas is the episode she's speaking about when Carol is singing in the church. After getting her voice back, the camera pans to the family. And there you are, Barry, with tears in your eyes and clearly emotional. I'm wondering, asks Shelley, if this is genuine Barry emotion and not Greg emotion. Feels like raw, real stuff, not acting. Do you remember how you felt watching Florence sing?
I do. It's very memorable. It really kind of begs the question, where does Barry end and where does Greg begin? How would Greg react to this? And I just reacted authentically. I just allowed myself to be in that moment. She was singing, and it was so beautiful. And I just had such great affection for her and what she was doing that I was just moved, very moved. I didn't try and hide it or run from it. I just kind of borrowed from what was really going on inside of me, Barry, and let it come out as Greg.
Oh, that's really cool.
I know we'll learn this in the coming weeks when we turn our attention to this episode, but was that a second-year show or a first-year show?
First.
It was.
We'll get to this too. It was the turning point for our series. Without that episode and the bump in the ratings, we might not have had a second year.
I'll be darned.
Really?
Yeah, it was very, very significant.
We were sucking wind?
Yep.
At that point?
Yep.
Wow. You got to think about that sometimes. The way series do this. Seinfeld famously was just...
we were treading water there. Treading water.
Isn't that something? Now, Florence was really quite a singer, as I recall.
Oh, yeah. Broadway. Broadway babe.
Broadway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she was really very, very talented. So that's a real emotion, Shelley. That's the real thing. Sharp-eyed Lisa asks this. filming of Where There's Smoke, which is an episode we recapped right here on the Real Brady Bros podcast, as well as A Fistful of Reasons, had scenes next to a tree near Lucille Ball's old office. Did you have much Desilu influence or interesting stories told about Desilu at Paramount when you were there? And had it moved on to its own independence after it was sold and became Paramount in the late 60s?
Let me jump in here. It had become Paramount, and not being older than 11 years old, having no idea of the history of television. To me, it was just all the Paramount lot, but there were dollies and equipment that were labeled Desilu and would for years continue to be Desilu, because when the lots were blended and it was Paramount, those things that were labeled Desilus were all Paramount. So there wasn't any effort put in to removing the name that was stenciled onto dollies and cameras and other equipment that was the possession now of Paramount. But I always tried and never found a method of or a place that depicted what the two studios looked like. What did they have to remove to make them one studio? There must have been a wall between them. If there's some place out there, I would love our audience to let me know where it might be, where one could take pictures of the old lots. Because
it was originally radio, it was RKO. And then I thought they just began to expand the property. Quite a remarkable history that Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball had in their force. They were a true force, genuine force in television. It was unheard of that actors would, buy a studio as they did. I was aware of that it was our offices where she was. But you're right, Chris, there wasn't a lot of influence because they were no longer filming Lucy's show by the time we started. And Gulf Western had purchased it to make it Paramount.
Right. I mean, it just looked like one contiguous property that, in my mind, were built that.
It was kind of like the next generation. By the time we were there, it was Star Trek and Mission Impossible and Mannix and Odd Couple, and then of course the movies that were done, many of them, including The Godfather, while we were filming in their first year. So the history.
Well, when was it that the lots became one? When they removed the wall between them, which I imagine must have been there if they were two different lots.
Probably
that butted up.
I'm just guessing here at the time of acquisition. I'm not. I'm not clear that
67.
I mean, was it actually one studio at
Desilu on one side? That's where the commissary was. That's right. Desilu, and then Paramount was from at least the water tank. Now it's a parking lot, but where they had the psych for the filming of Sea War adventures. They'd fill it with
Voyage
water
to the bottom of the sea.
On it. Yeah, that's all Paramount. So somewhere between that tank and then the commissary to the west, there was some division between those two lots. They just happened to be butting up against one another. But it wasn't as though the architecture was different.
True.
It didn't appear that one was much different than the other. So I'm sure that probably built by the same crews and designed in the same fashion. It looks like it was the same age. So yeah, there was no real clear delineation between one side or the other, except for the dollies. I remember used to say Desilu on them.
All right,
fascinating.
That answers that.
Yeah, just a further reflection on RKO, which was, indeed, originally a radio company. They used sound stages for radio shows back then. They had audience come in. They may not have been as ornate or as spacious as television and film sound stages, but they did use rather large buildings for these adventures, because the actors would line up in front of microphones and literally act out the various episodes that they were doing.
Right.
And then later, of course, that disappeared, and guys like me ended up in a little studio with a turntable going, "Hey, everybody, it's Madonna on Kiss FM."
What does RKO stand for?
You know what? Now you got me. I'll have to look that one up.
I'll ask our listeners.
Let's go to our crack staff, our listeners. That's our crack staff.
Our question is to you.
Mm-hmm. What does that stand for?
Because did Ricky and Lucy start RKO, or they bought RKO?
Ricky and Lucy.
They bought RKO.
Don't know how the deal went.
That's my understanding, yes.
So they could have been that RKO started. I mean, I have to do some research here, but as a radio company became television, and they bought them both. I'm not sure that any of the lot over there at Desilu was a radio station. We'll have to look in.
Yeah, we'll have to look in. That's an interesting piece of history that we should do. Let's move on. You guys often talk about directors, and Rick asks an interesting one. Oscar Rudolph and his method of getting quickly to things, something you guys had brought up previously, occasionally with less importance paid to reality and continuity. Were the guys ever able to ask, meaning you guys, ever able to ask for a second take if you felt that you could offer a better performance in a scene, or did that vary depending on the director?
Yes, we oftentimes would ask for another take. But it's very collaborative, very professional. You don't want to be the guy that's always saying, I can do it better. I can do it better. You bring your A game first time around. If it's not really necessary, it costs money. Time is money, especially on a soundstage. One of the things that gets tricky between a director and an actor is the director's, he understands how the editing is going to go. So where the camera's going to be pointing on what line or for what's, and, an actor might, had a flub on a line that the director is not even going to be showing that actor. So, or the back of the actors, which they can borrow from another take. So it gets tricky. Yes, it would happen occasionally, and no, quite often. I know there was a technique with a lot of actors that would intentionally blow things in the master. Takes, so that the director would be forced to be on a close-up.
Well, that's funny.
It was done right. It was kind of a certain.
That's the money shot. Your close-up, and for ego, you want the camera on you. So if you screwed up something in the master, which is the shot of everybody in the shot or in the scene, and they only had it in your close-up, then they're coming to you.
Right.
They're not going to be able to.
I never thought of that. That's great.
And I don't. In my answer to that question, it was later that I felt that I could ask. I didn't feel in the first 2 years, definitely the first year, that it was my place to ask for another take.
Interesting.
But I think there was a lot of other takes asked of me because of my particular enunciation or lack of sensible enunciation that caused, at times, there needed to be.
Oh, I think the best actor flubs a line. I don't think that's crazy.
Well, I think we already talked about it. I remember the one scene. I think it might have been Jack Arnold who was the director, who was very patient. But I came in and said, aren't you coming with us? Something about hurry. And I said it like that, hurry. And it wouldn't come. And then it said, Chris, it's hurry. Okay, I know it's hurry. The take went off. I keep saying hurry. So finally, I had to come up with the idea, can I say rush? And they were all ecstatic that I could say rush, because rush I wasn't going to destroy in the same way I was destroying hurry. And I learned a lesson from that. And I don't know if that was the third season. That sometimes you might have a better idea.
Maybe that's why in Paramount Plus now they have a closed caption under every one of your scenes.
The other one that Chris is referring to is from the pilot, Aren't You Coming With Us? And that was directed by John Rich, and John Rich cut no corners, and he was a dog, stand on something until it was right. And you must have done 10 takes of that. Aren't you coming with us? And it just wouldn't flow yet. And so he would go back and cut. All right, reset. We do it again. But that one I think you stuck with, and finally got it right.
No, never really got it. It's still, when we do the pilot, we'll come to that line, and it's, aren't you coming with us? Oh. It'll still work. It wasn't the way he envisioned the line being read. We'll have another one of those, for me, famous line readings in the episode later today.
Okay. Very good.
Come back to that.
All right. We'll look forward to it. Let's see here. This is an interesting one. Reno takes a deep dive on this one. Do you know what film stock the series was shot on? Boy, that's getting esoteric. And if there's a particular ASA rating, what next? The f-stop? What do you know about this stuff, guys?
Well, it was 35 millimeter. Is that what they're asking? It was
right.
But all I can say is that it was much slower. I guess slower. The ASA. Put it this way: they had to pour a lot of light on back then because the film wasn't as sensitive as film today. Not that we're using film, but you can do a scene nearly in the dark today.
Right.
And you'll see things.
Yeah, clearly.
But ours had to be like it was in an operating room.
Yes, exactly.
Tons and tons of light. And this is even on a soundstage with no other sunlight to compete against, because you'll always have to light more than the sun is pouring on a scene. So if you're outside, it's even worse because then they have to really light you up. Kind of counterintuitive, but
sounds like a camera operator that
completely changed.
We
should when we get Mike on, we'll come back to this
Reno
question. Ask him.
Maybe thinking about a career as film operator, or it's much different now.
Well, I mean, pretty standard back then. I would just look up what the ISO or the ASA was of film, 35 millimeter movie film in the in the 60s.
Yeah, and I take it wasn't flammable nitrate because that would have been a real problem.
Nope.
We don't do that. They didn't do that anymore. I think that ended sometime in the 50s, 60s. Let's see. Jeremy just piped in at the Real Brady Bros and says, "Hey, Barry and Christopher, you were very fortunate to come of age during a time when there was so much progress being made in the world, and the entertainment industry was reflective of this." And I think that's often the case with entertainment. It was often reflective, sometimes preachy, but more often reflective, I think. What were some of your favorite films and TV series while you were playing wholesome Brady Bros? And did your celebrity status allow you to sneak into R-rated or maybe X-rated films?
You prevented any of that. Barry, why don't you take that?
I was a real television watcher. That's what caused me to want to get into TV and movies, was watching TV. I've named a couple of them already. I love Star Trek. I love Mannix. My favorite show on television was Mission Impossible. Those were all on our lot. We also had the trio with Peggy Lipton and
Mod Squad.
Mod Squad was there, and we had access to most of the shows. Takes a Thief was going. I liked that show a lot.
That was a great show.
FBI was wonderful. Some lesser known ones, Roy Thinnis with The Invaders, I thought was a lot of fun to watch. The thing about the movies is there's kind of a different attitude. Television is a little bit more relaxed, and usually with the movies, they would close the set. Now, sometimes we could kind of sneak on, and the company would tolerate, if we were quiet and watching. Things move very slowly, but for the most part, they would discourage it. Otherwise I would have been on the set of, or tried to get on the set of The Godfather, for instance. But no, that wasn't going to happen.
No, I think Jeremy's also focusing on the going to the movies, actually, not so much a says, but did your celebrity status allow you to sort of, look who's here? Any of that?
Well, if you're underage for a certain movie and you're a celebrity, they'll pretty much pull you out of the crowd and say you're not old enough to be at this movie. I mean, being recognized is not a good thing.
I think R-rated, I was 14, 15. R-rated was not really enforced a lot. Most of the theater owners would rather have your money than keep you out. And X-rated movies, that too is a different animal. That was not going on in my teenage years.
Although there was one that came out. Urban Cowboy came out. I think it came out as X-rated, if I'm not mistaken.
Wasn't there something with Marlon Brando?
Oh, Midnight Cowboy.
Midnight Cowboy.
Is that X?
Sorry,
I did see that.
I don't know if it was X,
but that was that X?
I'm going to to look back and correct me if I'm wrong, audience. But
sure. Maybe because he played a gigolo, right? Or an escort.
Yeah, and that was considered
John
very
did.
strange back then. Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, one of the if you're a kid actor, one of the things that is necessary is being or playing younger than you are. They get a couple of years more of maturity for somebody who's 17 but looks 14 than somebody who is 14 playing 14, right? They get the 17-year-old to play the 14-year-old. So most child stars, I don't even know one, I can't even come up with one that might have looked older than their age. We're all much less mature than our compatriots or our friends. I mean, we were sort of like myself when I was graduating high school. I looked like, I was still in junior high. And as a result, getting into anything, a movie where you're to look the age or unage, you're already behind the eight ball.
But you tried, and that's the important thing.
No, I didn't. My mom wouldn't even let me go. I remember once being, this was a seminal moment in growing up where my mom and we hardly went to movies. So my mom took my brother, who's only a year older, to the Wild Bunch.
Oh my God, Sam Peckinpah.
And wouldn't take me. And I'm thinking, if we're crying out loud, we have to do everything together. Like when it's time for him to tie his shoes, I learned to tie my shoes. So I ended up tying my shoes a year earlier than he did. So it's like everything was being handled in the same time frame. And then all of a sudden, a movie like The Wild Bunch, I wasn't old enough to go to. I got pissed. I think I was 14 at the time.
Sounds a little like you're still a little bit angry about that.
I'm still resentful.
You want to give Mark a call? And
yeah. Well, it wasn't his fault,
Yeah, but you could blame him if you. I'll back you.
He probably said, "Mom, don't bring him. Don't bring him.
Leave him behind. Leave him behind."
Too funny. Final question, Lydia.
All right.
Kindly asks, how did you guys cope when or if you went back to normal school while not filming, or perhaps even after the show ended? Have you still got mates from school days? And she says, loving the chats from Bendigo, Australia. Mate.
I love that. Bendigo.
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 It was
I'm going to go with a Bendigo too. What's that now, Chris? Go ahead.
I'm now all ears. What were you mumbling about?
Garbling about Bendigo,
well, we were
Bendigo,
saying,
or whatever that is.
It's not Bendigo because it's just not.
There'd be an N in there. There's no N.
But I think
Bendigo.
Again, we could look it up, but I'm going to say Bendigo.
Yeah, which sounds like an ailment.
I'll say Bendigo. I say Bendigo. Digo.
Let's call the whole
thing.
Who
knows?
Shall we?
All right. So, school was something I very much enjoyed. There was some trauma related to being a celebrity going to school, because that wasn't something that was normal and had to get used to. But ultimately, we worked all summer and had some time off around Christmas, a little break, back to work. We were done a couple of weeks before the 20-week break, and that's when we go back to school every year. So for those 5 years at the 20-week break, you're being reintroduced to your school. Sometimes a new class. That's the first time you're seeing your schoolmates in quite a time. I liked it. I mean, it's like at the end of summer, you're looking forward to school. It's sort of like that. By the time our production was over, it was, change of pace was.
I think I'm really, really glad for you, Chris, that it was like a good, positive experience, and you could create friends and make relationships and the like. Once I started working full time, I kind of felt a bit isolated. When the series came in, now I was going in the 10th grade, so I had just the three years left. And that first year, I went back to my high school, which was Palisades High School, same one they use in Modern Family. And I didn't connect really with anybody. I wasn't involved in sports, athletics. I had missed the first 20 weeks, so I felt a bit like an outsider and kind of muddled through it. And that's the last. After that, I was privately tutored. I did 11th to 12th grade back to back and finished a year early, and that was that.
Yeah, it all worked out well for me. I mean, I really enjoyed it. I'm in fact, when we were finally off the air, it allowed me my entire senior year in high school to be, at my normal school. Allowed me to pick up science classes that I couldn't take while we were, in studio school, like anything with a lab, biology and chemistry. There was no time left for physics. Would have loved that. I did get involved in sports, played on the soccer team, ran on the track team. I was like getting it all just in that last year, and I was very fortunate in the timing, and very much look forward to being just a normal kid. We had different approaches to this. Yours was more directed, more planned. Mine was more accidental, and we were sort of absorbing our experiences completely different.
It's a good question because, people ask oftentimes, how being a professional affects your social life, your growth, your maturity. And it really can come in and compromise it in a tremendous way because there's such an enormous time commitment to the work. And when you're there, focused and creating a show, and you're not doing what every other kid who's 14, 15, 16, 17 years old is doing, which is hanging out and going to after school stuff and football games and dances and campouts and classes together and eating in the commissary. You're not doing any of that. And that can be devastating. In my case, that it just took a long time, well into my 20s, before I could get that all sorted out.
Well, the timing was worse for you as well because you started in 10th grade. Those 3 years were completely absorbed doing our show. And like I said, I couldn't, even though I was going back to school at the 20-week break, that didn't allow me to take biology, didn't allow me to take physics because half the year is gone. You can't catch up. to the labs you missed in the first 20 weeks, as it's an entire year course. It's not just a 20-week course. So those things are off the table. I mean, I loved shop. I won our high school's most outstanding industrial arts student my senior year as well. I know I was given a medal by Tom Bradley. He gave, it was a big a ceremony which he handed out, these awards to every student for their high school that won their outstanding industrial arts.
What a great memory.
So, that was actually something that I'm quite proud of, because really I had little time in school. I did make the most of it and proved myself to be just a normal person.
And you still are
for that. Yeah,
almost. And my mom wondered, why do you want to be just normal? Why do you want to be normal?
I know we're running a little later than we normally do with the Q&As, but I got a follow-up. And this is just, again, sort of centering on the idea, maybe one more for you, Chris. You would eat, and as would Barry, at the commissary, obviously, when you were on set. How did you find the school cafeteria after that ended, Chris? I mean, were there any differences there? As opposed to the cordon bleu, you may be getting a Paramount.
I never ate at the cafeteria. Now, I did when I went to high school, but my senior year was a rather short year. I think I got out at 2:00. I started at 7. I started what they call it an early schedule, an AM schedule, where I started at 7 a.m. But I think I was done by 1, so I didn't really need the lunch at the cafeteria. And prior to high school, it was a bag lunch.
Just like Alice made for us.
Where's the beef Wellington? What is this macaroni business? What's going on here? This can only imagine.
There is no Hollandaise sauce for this meat or this hamburger.
I remember, let's see, lunch was 35 cents in junior high, and that just wasn't tolerable to my dad. No, making your lunch.
Oh, my God. I had the best lunches at junior high. Well, we won't get into that. This is not my podcast. Guys, thanks so much. Q&A in the books. We're off to do an episodic recap, and we have many more to listen to. There's about 35 out there already. I invite all of you to do so and to go into the Facebook page at Real Brady Bros and ask the questions wherever you see fit. Thank you, gentlemen. It's Barry Williams and Christopher Knight, the Real Brady Bros.
Thank you all.
Have a sunshine day, everybody.